Unit 3, page 41. Listening to.
Have you got any other questions, Mr. Thorpe? Is there anything else about capitalisation you'd like me to explain? Anything in the provisions, perhaps?
Yes. Look at this. Here it says consideration for shares. What does that mean, consideration? To consider means to think about something as far as I'm concerned.
In this case, consideration simply means payment. It can also mean something that you promise to give or do when you make a contract, for example.
You lawyers have a language all of your own.
Yes, it can be confusing. Any other questions?
Well, yes, there is. There's something I've always wanted to know. Could you explain why these provisions are so incredibly difficult to understand? I mean, the subject matter itself isn't too difficult. It's fairly logical, after all, but the way it's written, that's another story.
Well, that's what's known as legalese, the special style of language used in legal documents. It can be pretty hard to penetrate, I'm afraid.
But I'm reasonably well educated, and I'm an experienced businessman. You'd think I'd be able to understand something written for the purpose of conducting business without difficulty, wouldn't you? In my opinion, there's something wrong when texts are too difficult for the majority of people who have to deal with them to understand.
Then you'd agree with the plain language movement.
What's that?
That's a school of thought that believes that legal documents, actually documents of all kinds, should be written so that you can understand them easily the first time you read them. The way they see it, when it comes to legal texts, people are entitled to understand the documents that bind them or state their rights.
As far as I'm concerned, that's very sensible.
It is, I agree. And I think the idea is becoming increasingly popular. Many organisations and jurisdictions already recommend plain language principles, and many legal writing courses at universities stress the merits of plain language.
But there's still a long way to go.
There are always those who resist change, and the language of law is, by its very nature, inherently conservative. In the law, texts have authority, language has authority, and there's often a long tradition behind them. So you can understand a certain tendency to want to preserve old habits of speaking and writing.
Yes, that may be true. To my mind, the fact that the language of the law is so difficult for non-lawyers makes us all need the services of lawyers more, as interpreters.